Hello everyone, and welcome to Procurement in the Park. I'm Christian Schuh, and today I want to kick off an occasional series that draws inspiration from my book, The CPO, Transforming Procurement in the Real World. In this episode, I'm going to focus on the critical importance of understanding the power dynamic between buyers and suppliers. So, ganz kurz. Bitte schön. But let me start by telling you a little bit about the CPO, which is a work of fiction. The book tells the story of Thomas Sutter, an ambitious 30-something procurement manager at a global car maker called Autowerke. But really, the book is about the very real-world challenges facing everyone involved in company procurement functions. So why did I choose a fictional format to tell the story? I did so because I wanted to be free to tell readers what you might call the inside story of the procurement business in today's companies, and do so in an entertaining way that might appeal to a broad range of readers. And that's hard to do when you have to go through the laborious process of attribution, quotation approval, and so on. The fictional format gave me and my co-authors the freedom we craved to explain what's really going on. For this reason, most of Thomas Sutter's adventures, which draw on everything we have seen and heard over the decades working with many different companies, are deeply disguised. But there's one that isn't. And it relates to the core theme of today's video, the power dynamic between buyers and sellers. In an opening scene, Thomas meets the CEO of a US company on his flight to Chicago. It is a chance encounter that influences the rest of the story. Seated together on the plane, the two men get talking, and before long, Thomas is explaining that Autowerke really invented professional procurement back in 1985, when the CEO plucked a young Italian factory manager from obscurity to run the procurement function and to slash the budget by 1 billion Deutschmarks. Some of you will recognize that this particular episode is loosely based on the real-life story of Ignacio López, the brilliant Spanish industrial engineer who was talent spotted by Jack Smith, the head of General Motors European business in the mid-1980s and later CEO of the global company. Jack Smith, like the CEOs of many US and European car makers at that time, had a problem, a very big problem. Japanese car makers, above all Toyota, were transforming the auto industry with the new, efficient, lean approach to manufacturing. How could their rivals compete? Smith's answer was that he needed to cut the amount of money that GM was spending on suppliers. That meant he needed a new approach to procurement. As he was thinking about how to do this, he heard about López's work for one of GM's subsidiaries in northern Spain. To find out more, he flew to Spain, and there he met López for the first time. It was a meeting that would transform the business of procurement. Jack Smith found López in an office littered with car parts. What was going on? López, it turned out, was conducting what would now be called a teardown. Completely dismantling the car, inspecting the components, and searching for ways that GM could cut costs without compromising quality. Impressed by López's approach, Smith put him in charge of the procurement function of Opel, GM's German car maker, and tasked him with slashing the company's budget on suppliers. The result was extraordinary. In the period 1983 to 86, GM Europe reported annual losses of between $228 and $372 million. Opel's failings were a big part of this. Then, in 1987, after López had begun his work, GM made a net profit of $1.3 billion the first profit since 1982, when the reported number was a paltry $6 million. Opel's success in cutting costs was a big part of this. So what was López's secret? It was really his understanding of the power dynamic between buyers and suppliers. He realized that Opel was not making full use of its considerable buying power. In my book, The CPO, Thomas explains the Autowerke's Italian CPO deployed many of the same strategies that were developed by López. He broke up the cozy relationships between individual procurement managers and the opposite numbers in the supplier companies. This delivered savings of 5%. Also, he created a global supply chain by incentivizing procurement managers to buy not from local suppliers, but from suppliers of other countries. Within 2 years, he reduced the share of local suppliers from 95% to 85%. But when telling the story of Autowerke, Thomas added that since the days of Ignacio López, the art of procurement had evolved, and that the company now took a differentiated approach to suppliers. Where there is a wide choice of suppliers, Autowerke follows the López playbook by exercising its strong buying power and striking a hard bargain. But where there is a narrow choice of suppliers, for things like engine management systems, for example, Autowerke recognizes that its buying power is weak. It therefore builds a partnership with these highly valuable suppliers. As Thomas explains, and I quote from the book, there is a continuous dialogue between our CEO and their CEO, our head of engineering and their head of engineering, and so on. The object of all these conversations is to perfectly align innovation cycles. A new engine management technology should coincide with a new engine generation to best benefit both parties. By doing this, Autowerke recognizes that suppliers can be not only a source of cost savings, but also a source of innovation. In my most recent book, Profit from the Source, which is published by Harvard Business Review Press, I developed this theme. With my co-authors, I recommend that companies divide their suppliers into 3 distinct categories. A suppliers, who account for 50% of the procurement budget. B suppliers, who number 100 to 200 and account for about 35% of the budget. And C suppliers, who constitute the most numerous group of providers, often numbering several thousands, but who account for only about 15% of the budget. It is with the A suppliers that companies should consider developing a customized approach, building mutually beneficial partnership and, as we say, treating them as friends. But the core message remains the same. If you're CEO, follow the example of General Motors' Jack Smith and make procurement a leadership imperative and a critical part of the boardroom agenda. If you're CPO, follow the example of Ignacio López and understand the power dynamic between buyers and suppliers. When this happens, good things happen too. Thank you for watching. I am Christian Schuh and this is Procurement in the Park.